Coming up on Market to Market. A bipartisan conference committee hammers out the details of the Farm Bill. Growers in Colorado harvest America's first acknowledged crop of hemp in 50 years. And the U.S. reduces its greenhouse gas emissions, but things are a bit cloudier in China. Those stories and market analysis with Naomi Bloom next.
This is the Friday, October 25 edition of Market to Market, the weekly journal of rural America.
Hello, I'm Mike Pearson. Now that the government shutdown and federal debt limit showdown are in the rearview mirror, at least for a little while, Congress is taking up other issues like immigration reform and, of course, the Farm Bill. Senate lawmakers named conferees this week who will sit down with their House counterparts to work out key differences in their proposals. The legislation approved in the Senate, you may recall, included modest cuts in nutrition programs, while the House completely removed nutrition spending from its version of the Farm Bill. This week, though, the full membership of the conference committee was announced, the first meeting was scheduled, and at least one farm state lawmaker expressed optimism for the bill to be signed into law by the end of the year. As Congress gets back to the business of governing, rural advocates are hoping a bipartisan conference committee is a sign of progress for legislation that has languished for years. Negotiations are slated to begin next week. The Farm Bill will be one of the first major post-shutdown tests of congressional unity. The Farm Bill, traditionally a bipartisan piece of policy, has been the opposite this cycle. Mired in rhetoric reserved for more contentious measures, the Farm Bill now retreats to the conference committee room, where 41 members of the House and Senate will try to work out differences in each of the bills.
The meeting will come to order.
House Ag Committee Chair Frank Lucas will lead the discussion with members from both chambers beginning Wednesday. That's a throwback to past bills that were hammered out in committees and not by leadership. Despite its name, the vast majority of Farm Bill spending supports nutrition programs, like the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. Formerly known as food stamps, SNAP will likely be the biggest sticking point. The Senate cut $4 billion in SNAP spending, while House lawmakers separated nutrition programs into a separate bill and cut SNAP by nearly $40 billion. Congress has until January 1 to approve a bill before farm policy reverts to 1940s-era laws. Conference committee membership is large, drawing from farm states and urban areas because of the wide-reaching scope of the bill. Wednesday's agenda will include time for all 41 members to make opening statements. After that, however, the path is unclear.
The last one and the hardest one is the food stamp issue, or the SNAP issue. Payment caps, that'll be a pivotal issue, and that's probably the second most difficult of the issues to get resolved. But I want to get to the end of this thing, and I want a bill on the president's desk. I said before the snow flies, I know in part of Iowa I'm already too late on that, but we're going to try to get this done, and I think we get it done by the end of the year.
Producers are calling for action. South Dakota farmer Kevin Scott says harvest takes priority now, but once the dust settles, it will matter greatly.
The average farmer doesn't really care that much about what's going on there, but we do know that there are critical things that do or do not get done based on whether they're in business or not. And some of those things are the FSA office being open to handle reporting needs. We had a cattle disaster in western South Dakota, and they couldn't report the losses to an FSA office because they weren't open.
An early fall blizzard that slammed South Dakota, killing thousands of the cattle, happened in the middle of the government shutdown. Producers were left without immediate federal support. But long term, producers are looking for markets for their commodities. Ann Scott, who also serves as the American Soybean Association National Director, knows action is needed on the Farm Bill.
One of the major things, and most farmers probably don't think about it, is the federal aid that is given to export enhancement. And without those things in place, we can't effectively export our soybeans, and soybeans is kind of important to us right now. That's what we're harvesting. South Dakota exports 60% of our soybeans, so without the export enhancements, we're in tough shape. So we do need a farm bill in place, and without Congress working, they aren't going to get a farm bill done, and we've waited on that for quite a while.
Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack has long called for action from Congress on a new farm bill.
they have to have the policies and the programs of the Farm Bill so that they can continue to provide credit, so they can continue to expand economic opportunity. They can do a better job of conserving our natural resources, expanding market opportunities, both here and abroad. All that important work tied to jobs, tied to incomes, tied to rural life and quality of life. So it's important to have a Farm Bill.
The governors of 8 states pledged this week to work together to help make their highways more friendly for electric cars, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, and plug-in hybrids. Policymakers hope to create charging stations and other fueling infrastructure that would serve 3.3 million of the high-tech vehicles by 2025. Representatives of California, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, and Vermont all signed on to the agreement. The goal, of course, is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And despite seemingly ever-increasing rhetoric over climate change and policies designed to fight it, data released this week revealed the United States is, in fact, curbing its emissions. But in China, not so much. Heavy smog blanketed northeast China this week, snarling traffic in the world's most populated nation. Winter typically brings the worst air pollution to the region of China as the heating season begins. Burning coal in homes and municipal systems is allowed to start on a specific date. For the northern city of Harbin, that date was Sunday, and by Monday, visibility was less than 50 yards, according to state media. Some schools were closed because of the conditions. At least 40 flights were canceled as the air pollution was 24 times higher than the level considered safe by the World Health Organization. Similar scenes played out across China's largest cities, where some of the world's worst smog conditions exist. The Chinese government has long been indifferent to the environment while pursuing economic development. But recently, anti-pollution efforts have been launched. Last month, China's cabinet announced plans to reduce dependence on coal to below 65% by 2017. But China is still the world's leader in carbon pollution. The United States is in second place, but unlike China, U.S. carbon emissions are on the decline. The Department of Energy said this week the U.S. reduced carbon dioxide pollution by 3.8% in 2012, the largest drop since 1990. The only year with that large of a decline was 2009, when America was locked in the worst recession since the 1930s. U.S. cars and factories spewed 5.83 billion tons of carbon dioxide last year. That's down nearly 4% from 2011, and it's the lowest level for U.S. emissions since 1994. The reduction was attributed to a warmer winter, more efficient cars, and the ongoing shift from coal power to cleaner-burning natural gas to produce electricity. Carbon dioxide is the chief man-made global warming gas, and burning coal produces far more of the pollutant than burning natural gas. In 1994, coal provided 52% of U.S. power, and now it accounts for 37%, according to the Carnegie Mellon Electricity Industry Center. Some of the past reductions in emissions came during years of economic downturns, but this latest reduction occurred during a 2.8% growth year of gross domestic product, and energy use was dropping by more than 2%. An Energy Department economist says that this latest drop was clearly not due to a recession, but rather increased energy efficiency and an overall reduction in carbon emissions. Police in Oregon say a view from space helped them bust a medical marijuana operation that may have been just a little too productive. Authorities said images from Google Earth taken in June showed dozens of plants in neat rows. The producer was registered to grow for 5 people, which amounts to 30 mature plants. But when authorities raided the operation in September, they seized more than 90 plants. But public attitudes on marijuana are shifting. A Gallup poll released this week revealed 58% of Americans now support legalizing marijuana. That's up 10 points since last November, just after Colorado and Washington voters approved measures legalizing the recreational use of pot. And even though the Obama administration says it likely will not pursue arrests of users in those 2 states, those who grow marijuana and the non-intoxicating form of weed better known as hemp find themselves in legal limbo. And that was the case in Colorado earlier this month when workers harvested America's first acknowledged crop of hemp in more than 50 years. After citizens in Colorado voted last year to make marijuana legal for recreational use, Ray Laughlin and a handful of others decided to test federal laws that make it illegal to grow marijuana's non-intoxicating cousin, hemp.
And that really kind of opened the country's eyes to marijuana, and that opened the door for the legislature for hemp to be able to be, planted.
Colorado won't start granting hemp cultivation licenses until next year, but Laughlin felt he had little to fear after the U.S. Department of Justice said federal enforcement officials would generally defer to state marijuana laws.
Over the next 3 years, you're going to see these fields get denser and denser and denser.
Jason Love is the head of a Denver nonprofit that advocates for hemp cultivation. While this year's crop is modest, he dreams of a return to the good old days when hemp was in high demand to be used in rope and other fibers. According to the Department of Agriculture, U.S. hemp production peaked in 1943 with a crop of more than 150 million pounds. But growing hemp has been illegal for more than 5 decades, and in 2000, a USDA study concluded markets for U.S. hemp are and will likely remain small and thinly traded markets. Nevertheless, U.S. demand for hemp is increasing dramatically. In 2011, for instance, $11.5 million worth of hemp products were imported, up more than 700% from the year 2000.
I dreamed of this day for many, many years, and to see this right now gives me chills.
The Rocky Mountain state's hemp status is not unique. 10 other states have industrial hemp regulations that conflict with federal drug laws. And an amendment in the proposed Farm Bill would legalize the cultivation of industrial hemp nationwide. But it is far from certain that the provision will be included in the Farm Bill when it is approved.
Next, the Market-to-Market Report.
Grain prices fell modestly this week despite a weaker dollar. For the week, December wheat lost 15 cents, while the nearby corn contract moved just over a penny lower. Soybeans continued last week's rally as the November contract settled with a weekly gain of 9 cents. Nearby meal prices improved by $13.40 per ton. In the softs, cotton moved sharply lower as the December contract declined by more than $4 per hundredweight. In the dairy market, November Class 3 milk gained 44 cents, while the December contract moved 26 cents higher. Over in livestock, December cattle gained 95 cents, nearby feeders declined by 20 cents, and the December lean hog contract posted a weekly gain of nearly $2.50. In the financials, the euro gained 13 basis points against the dollar. Crude oil lost $3.26 per barrel. COMEX gold advanced by $38 per ounce, and the Goldman Sachs Commodity Index lost nearly 15 points to settle at 624.65. Here now to lend us her insight on these and other trends is one of our regular market analysts, Naomi Bloom. Naomi, welcome back.
Hi, thanks, Mike.
Last week, the hot topic during our discussion was wheat. This week, wheat seems to have cooled off a little bit, moved down to 15 cents. What's going on in the wheat market?
The wheat market is at a point of price discovery where a lot of the fresh, friendly news, which pushed it higher, has absolutely been factored into the market right now. And so right now we're balancing the fact of a decent start to the American crop as far as what got planted. We have 80% of the winter wheat planted and 50% emerged, and it's rated 65% good to excellent. So things are progressing quite well in that regard. And then globally, as far as other things that could maybe keep the market a little higher in the Black Sea region, there's concerns about the crop there and if it will germinate properly. So that's something to be monitored. But then on the flip side of things, Australia is going to be able to be harvesting very soon. And so even though we've had a lot of that Brazilian demand, now perhaps Australia can feed their needs as well. So for Chicago wheat prices and the Kansas wheat prices to stay between $7 and $7.25 in that area seems like a likelihood over the next couple of weeks until fresh news emerges sooner than later, hopefully.
So Australian wheat is priced at such a discount, it's cheaper to ship it from Australia to Brazil rather than the U.S. to Brazil.
Yeah, at times it can be. So that's something that we have to watch. But now if the dollar can continue lower, that might give us the advantage. And Brazil actually is looking to potentially import more. They're trying to reduce their tariffs, and so that way they could potentially import more from us. So lots of things that could be developing over the next couple of weeks, but in the meantime, we'll probably see that price just stay stagnant.
All right, now you mentioned the weaker dollar, and that's been something we've been watching. Talk to us a little bit about what's driving that. Why are we seeing the dollar continue to weaken?
Yeah, that's a great question, and a lot of it is just having to do with global economy, U.S. economy, things like that. And so Right now with the dollar, it's on a support level near the 76 area, and it looks like it maybe can potentially go lower to lows that we haven't seen in the last 2 or 3 years. And so if that continues to happen, then hopefully that'll help with our export market. But it's a lot with just the U.S. economy and things in Washington and how we just kick the can down the road and we have to wait until January. And so lots of things to keep an eye on there as well.
That's a telling slide from just earlier this spring when we were touching that $84 mark in the dollar. All right, well, so that's going to be something to keep an eye on, and definitely Washington politics are playing a role there.
Yes, very much so.
Well, now let's take a look at the corn market. We've got harvest pretty solidly underway. Where does the trade think we're coming on yield? Early reports were a lot higher than we'd expected. Is that still where the trade is?
Yeah, that still is what we're hearing from our producers. And the next USDA report will be on Friday, November 8th. And trade is expecting that the USDA will increase yield towards the 160 area. So if that's the case, then we have definitely a lot more supply available. On this next USDA report, they also will be giving us an up-to-date version of the planted acres, the harvested acres. So there's a lot of things that could come as fresh news from there. But in the meantime, expect to see December futures stay between 425 and 450 as it tries to just find its balance in the world right now as far as demand and trying to understand where the U.S. producer is just going to be putting their crop in the bin and sitting on it. So I'm really expecting quiet market prices there, and then that USDA report might be the next thing that gives us some sort of price movement.
Now, with that being said, looking at this range, 425 to 450, pretty narrow trading range, perhaps a reduction in volatility, does that create some opportunities for producers to affordably prepare for some action on November 8th?
That's a great question, and it can, because when the market isn't as volatile, it can make option strategies more reasonable. It can allow you to kind of take some time and really figure out your scenario planning for what you're going to do in case we get a friendly reaction on the report and the market goes higher, or what you're going to be able to do if the market goes lower. So the other thing too, the more that a price will go sideways and for the longer duration of time, then something explosive will potentially happen down the road. And it could be a price move where we actually see the futures price go down to $4. Maybe something will happen where we get some sort of excitement news where we could see prices go to $4.75, but probably just quiet trading range for now.
Now, as far as the trade is anticipating, from the private reports put out, what we've seen from FSA so far, we're probably anticipating a reduction in acres plus that increase in yield. Are they anticipating just a bigger corn number? Should that be what producers should plan on, do you think?
It's priced in. Absolutely, it's priced in. And so if they tell us what we're thinking, it's no big deal, and then we try to go back and trade other things. Potentially, with harvest coming to an end, the seed reps are out there already trying to get producers to figure out what they're going to do next year. So maybe a battle for acres could come sooner than later. The world is really anticipating that we're going to be planting more soybeans next year, so maybe corn will try to come back in and fight for the battle and have to have some price rally movement in order to entice the producer to do more corn acres again.
And that's a great segue as we lead into soybeans, held $13 this week.
Yeah.
We've pushed up above it a couple times and closed right at 13. Where does that set the market up as we move into next week?
For the next week, for the November and the January contracts, really thinking that those prices will be able to stay near $13 to $13.25. The market still is paying the producer for their beans now, yet there's so much demand potential coming down the road because there's no one available to sell beans except for the United States right now, that we are definitely the supplier. So we'll probably see the November and the January contracts stay firm. If China comes in and does any big major buying, we could easily see probably the January contract, because the November will be expiring sooner than later, shoot up towards $14. We do not have any reason to say higher than 14 at all, because of the ample global supplies and the fact that South America is planting a huge crop, a record crop potentially, and if they don't have any weather issues coming down the road, then we will see those deferred contracts, March, May, June, November, stay at a weaker price point. But for now, if you're a producer, keep watching the markets over the next month, because your pricing opportunity is now for what you've just harvested.
So advice, maybe hold on to a few bushel of beans.
Hold on to a few bushels, but don't think it's going to go crazy higher, because it really doesn't have to. So when the opportunity arises and we see any sort of a rally, please do your part to sell your cash and take
Feed the
advantage of
market.
it. Yes.
Now, one of the interesting stories this week, we saw Russia buying some beans.
Yes.
Does that happen very often?
No,
Okay.
it doesn't. I was really surprised to see that too. And for me, I thought, well, what is that telling us?
And what did you decide?
I don't know, but I was really quite surprised. And so it's just a telling sign to say that we are definitely a supplier in the world right now. So it's something to keep an eye on for future markets too.
All right. Now, let's take a look at the cotton market. We've seen cotton sideways, a little bit lower, and then this week, $4 down. What happened in cotton?
It was a major technical support area that fell apart, and therefore it was a lot of technical selling that happened. Right now in cotton, we have such a huge global supply. Ending stocks are just humongous, and so that's what's pressuring the market lower right now, and we'll probably continue to see that for the short term. We'll see the market be able to have a little bit of a technical retracement higher, but because the global supply is so big right now, cotton is just probably going to go back and test the lows from a year ago, and then it'll have to do its fight for acres. So I don't think that we'll see prices go low and stay low, but first we have to go a little lower before we can come back up.
The market's going to test them, see where the support really lies. And the lows from last year, off the top of your head, do you remember what sort of
75.
numbers? 75. Okay, so could be another $4 down potentially. All right. Now let's take a look at the dairy market. We did see a move this week, 44 cents in the nearby contract. What happened? What's going on in dairy?
We still have strong export markets. Exports overall are up 13% from a year ago level. Our cheese is in major demand, and especially our whole milk powder to China. And so that's what's been pushing that market a lot higher. We have coming up, though, in the first week of November, some bigger dairy reports coming out, cold storage and along with a production report. And those are expected to show on the production side that the U.S. supplies are big and getting bigger, especially with corn being cheaper. We'll probably see some bigger production numbers. But though, because the demand is so strong, we're expecting that potentially we could see the fourth quarter price get up towards $19. But that's a point to be making some sales, because New Zealand, who had its drought, is now producing more milk. They're recovering from it. Their production is up 4.5%, which in terms of milk is a very big number. And so the global supply is getting larger. And so even though our export market is great, we're going to have some competition soon.
And New Zealand has long time been an export partner with China on powdered milk. So that would be a direct competitor right there. So $19 look to make some sales. We'd heard earlier in the year $20 might be in the realm of possibility before January 1st. Probably not. Just don't think we're going to quite touch it.
Not so much just because our production levels in the United States are up 1% from a year ago. And so with the report coming out in that first week of November, that might be the next thing that potentially tells us it's larger than that. So it's really something to be mindful of.
The market grew, the producers grew a lot faster than they'd anticipated. Now let's take a look over at the cattle market. We saw some interesting news on the fat cattle trade this week on the cash side. Producers paying $132 to $134, record cash prices. What's happening?
The demand is really staying strong. And we also found out this week that our exports are up from a year ago level. Japan is buying our product like crazy. And so that is where our product is going to. The demand is staying strong. And even in the United States, the economy, now that we got this government issue somewhat over with, is really hanging in there. And so with gasoline prices lower and holidays coming up, people are maybe in the mood to spend a little bit more. And so as we all know, beef tastes great. And so the demand is keeping the market strong. And with the supply being so low, that's of course another reason for the market to stay strong in price. I would think that prices will continue to stay firm over the next couple of months, definitely. I'm curious to see if they can go too much higher, because that's really expensive.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't think it's going to fall apart though either. So it's one of those things. I wouldn't be complacent, because just when you get comfortable, something could happen. But at the same time, with the demand being as strong as it is and the supply being as low as it is, prices should stay firm.
This was welcome news to producers who fought through the high feed prices, and they've been paying high prices for feeders. And now that's the flip side of this coin. This week we did see the feeder price begin to decline a little bit on the mercantile exchange. Anything fundamental happening there, or just producers taking a step back?
I think a little bit of a step back, some technical trading there as well, because when the price, if you look at a chart, it had gone into an upward channel and it hit the high end of the channel line, so then it just needs to set back a little bit. We might see it set back maybe just a little bit more, but overall it still is in a long-term uptrend. So it's also, like the live cattle, something that would probably stay firm to higher, because, again, the supply is being so tight.
And supplies are expected to be tight for the remainder of this year on into next spring.
Absolutely. But, you know, people I'm talking to, they're wanting to expand. They're thinking about it now that the pasture lands are better and now that the corn price is lower. So the expansion word, I think, is starting to emerge. But it just takes time, obviously.
You bet. You bet. Now let's take a look at the hog market. We did see hogs, another big move upward this week, nearly $2.50 higher. We're over $90 in hogs. Was that expected? Was the trade anticipating us to continue moving upward in hogs?
I'm mixed on it, and the demand side is staying strong, but yet this week the weights are heavier. Weights are up 5 to 6 pounds over last year, and also the cutout values were just a little bit lower. So there's things happening where we're not quite sure if the demand can stay strong. We've got more supply potentially coming onto the market, yet this price is staying higher. So it's probable that we could stay in a sideways range here until we get 1 or 2 more pieces of news. Maybe it's going to be on the cold storage report coming out. That might be the next piece of news that could help us with price direction. So probably firm for another week or 2. But that is just a mystery market to me. It definitely has some friendly fundamental outlook to it, but at the same time, there might be some more supply coming out soon.
How should producers be anticipating or preparing for this situation given the uncertainty?
The suggestion I would say is to put some sort of a mental stop under the market. So what that means is that if the price goes lower than a support area, that you have the discipline then to pull the trigger. And that might mean doing something in your cash market. That might mean putting a hedge on the board or using a put. In the meantime, though, as long as it's going up, let it go, but don't be complacent and have plan B ready to go.
How far, in your estimation, should producers let it slide? 89, 88, 87? What would be a good number?
Yeah, actually, that's kind of the range that we're in. So 90 is kind of where we've been. 88 is support, and I think we'll continue to stay in that area.
Thank you so much, Naomi.
You're welcome.
That wraps up this edition of Market to Market. But Naomi and I will continue our discussion and answer some of your questions in our Market Plus segment on our website. You'll also find audio podcasts and streaming video of our program, as well as links to our Twitter feed and Facebook account exclusively at the Market to Market website. And be sure to join us next week when we'll take you inside the conference committee meeting on the Farm Bill. Until then, thanks for watching. I'm Mike Pearson. Have a great week.
Market to Market is a production of Iowa Public Television, which is solely responsible for its content.